I'm Crystal, 28 years old. We agree you're no longer part of this family, don't come, my father wrote in our family group chat while I was getting dressed for Thanksgiving dinner. Before I could even respond, my sister removed me from the chat, so I removed them from access to my money in our joint account. 3 hours later, they called me begging. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up and tell you how I got to this point, because trust me, this story has more twists than a telenovela and twice as much family drama. 2 years ago, I was married to Marcus Wellington, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune that could probably fund a small country. On paper, he was absolutely perfect. 6'2", sandy brown hair, the kind of smile that made waitresses forget to charge for dessert, and successful enough to make my father's teacher salary look like pocket change. But here's what I learned about men who look perfect on paper. Sometimes that's the only place they're perfect. Marcus had this supernatural ability to make everyone around him feel like they were the most important person in the room. He'd take my parents on those European river cruises that cost more than most people's cars, always flying them first class and booking them in suites with champagne waiting on ice. At family dinners, he'd insist on paying for everyone at restaurants where the appetizers cost $50 and came in portions small enough to fit on a quarter. My father would beam with pride, announcing to whoever would listen that his son-in-law was really going places in the business world. My father called Marcus the son I never had, which should have been my first red flag, because, he actually had a son. My brother Jake was sitting right there, but apparently having a pharmaceutical fortune makes you more son-worthy than sharing actual DNA. But I was too blinded by what I thought was love to see the warning signs flashing like a neon sign in Vegas. The day I discovered his affair, I was supposed to be at a marketing conference in Seattle. 3 days of PowerPoint presentations about consumer engagement strategies and networking events, where everyone pretended to care about each other's business cards. My flight got canceled because of a storm that apparently decided to park itself over the Pacific Northwest for the foreseeable future. Instead of rebooking and extending my trip, I decided to surprise Marcus with a romantic evening at home. Maybe cook his favorite dinner, open that expensive bottle of wine we'd been saving, you know the drill. The surprise was definitely on me. I found him in our bedroom, our king-size bed with the Egyptian cotton sheets I'd picked out, with his assistant Rebecca, a blonde 24-year-old with the kind of enthusiasm for her job that I'd clearly underestimated. Not exactly the homecoming surprise I'd planned. More like the kind of surprise that makes you question everything you thought you knew about your life. What came next was almost worse than finding them together in what used to be my sanctuary. When I told my family about filing for divorce, expecting the kind of support and sympathy that families are supposed to provide during life's worst moments, I got lectures instead. Every man has little slip-ups, my father said over Sunday dinner the following week, actually defending Marcus like he was some kind of victim of circumstances. That doesn't mean you throw away a good marriage. Marcus provides stability for all of us, Crystal. You need to think about the bigger picture here. Stability for all of us, not support for me, his daughter who'd just discovered her husband cheating. Stability for all of us. The priorities were crystal clear, if you'll pardon the ironic expression. My mother had died from breast cancer 3 years earlier, after a battle that lasted 18 months and cost us more than just money. She'd been the glue holding our family together, the one who remembered birthdays and organized holidays and made sure we all stayed connected even when life got busy. Since her death, I'd tried desperately to fill that role. I organized Thanksgiving dinners, planned Christmas celebrations, remembered everyone's birthdays, and made sure we had regular family gatherings. I'd become the unofficial family coordinator, the one who sent group texts about dinner plans and made reservations and kept everyone's social calendars in sync. But apparently, none of that emotional labor mattered compared to Marcus's financial contributions to their increasingly expensive lifestyle. My sister Emma, who was 17 and had somehow landed an internship at Marcus's pharmaceutical company, through what I now realize was a calculated move on his part, was even more direct in her betrayal. Maybe if you weren't so boring and uptight all the time, he wouldn't have needed to find excitement elsewhere, she said, not even bothering to look up from her phone where she was probably texting her friends about some drama at school. Marcus is a good man who takes care of this family. You should forgive him and stop being so dramatic about everything. 17 years old, and already an expert on marriage and forgiveness. Kids these days seem to know everything except how to appreciate the people who actually love them. My brother Jake, who was 25 and should have known better, was even more brutally honest about his priorities. Look, Crystal, I'm not going to lose my golf partner and Lakers season tickets over your personal drama. Marcus and I have plans for the playoffs, and I'm not canceling them because you can't handle a little infidelity. Marriage is complicated. Get over it. A little infidelity. That's what my family called my husband of 3 years sleeping with another woman in the bed where I'd planned to raise children someday. Sitting there at that Sunday dinner table, looking around at the faces of people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, listening to them choose my cheating ex-husband over their own daughter and sister, something fundamental died inside me. But something else was born too, a determination to show them exactly who they were really dealing with and exactly what they were about to lose. The divorce took 8 months of pure hell, 8 months of Marcus alternating between love-bombing me with expensive gifts and threatening me with financial ruin if I didn't come to my senses. First came the jewelry phase, a different piece every week, each one more expensive than the last. A diamond tennis bracelet that cost more than most people's annual salary, emerald earrings that supposedly reminded him of my eyes, a sapphire necklace that came with a card reading, "I'm nothing without you." When the jewelry didn't work, he moved to grand gestures. A surprise trip to Paris that I refused to take. A new Mercedes in my favorite color parked in our driveway with a giant bow on top. Flowers delivered to my office every single day for 2 weeks straight until I had to ask security to stop accepting them because my coworkers were getting allergic reactions. Then came the therapy phase. Crystal, I found this amazing couples counselor. Dr. Richardson has saved dozens of marriages. Just give us one session. What's the harm in trying? The harm, I explained to him repeatedly, was that therapy only works when both people want to fix the relationship. I wanted to end it. There's a difference between working through problems and trying to resurrect something that's already dead. But Marcus was nothing if not persistent. He enrolled himself in individual therapy and sent me weekly updates on his progress. He'd apparently discovered that his affair was really about his fear of commitment and childhood abandonment issues stemming from his parents' messy divorce. My therapist says I was self-sabotaging because I was afraid of being truly vulnerable with someone, he told me during one of his surprise visits to my office. I hurt you because I was scared of how much I loved you. It was almost impressive how he'd managed to make his betrayal about his feelings instead of my pain. Like he was the real victim because he'd been scared of love. When psychology didn't work, he tried financial intimidation. Crystal, you need to think about what you're walking away from. The house, the investments, my family's company. Do you really want to give up your entire future because of one mistake? One mistake. That's what he called a 6-month affair with his assistant. A single mistake, like he'd accidentally put salt in his coffee instead of sugar. But here's where Marcus miscalculated. He assumed I was like my family, motivated primarily by money and lifestyle. He thought if he could show me what I'd lose financially, I'd stay. What he didn't understand was that I'd already lost the only thing that mattered to me, my ability to trust him. And you can't put a price tag on that. My attorney, Rebecca Chen, was worth every penny I paid her. She was a tiny woman who wore designer suits and had the kind of sharp intelligence that could cut through Marcus's manipulation tactics like a knife through butter. Your husband is going to try everything to delay this divorce, she told me during our first meeting. He's going to make promises, threats, and appeals to your emotions. He's going to try to make you feel guilty, greedy, or unreasonable. My job is to remind you that none of that matters legally. She was right about everything. Marcus's team tried to claim that I was having an affair, that I was mentally unstable, that I was trying to destroy him financially out of spite. They painted me as a vindictive ex-wife who couldn't handle the realities of marriage. But Rebecca had done her homework. She had documentation of Marcus's affair, proof of his attempts to hide assets, and evidence of his pattern of manipulation throughout our marriage. When the settlement was finally finalized, I walked away with exactly what I deserved. Half of everything we'd built together, plus a portion of his family's company that I'd helped expand through my marketing expertise. The house in Malibu with the infinity pool and ocean views. The investment portfolio that I'd actually managed better than Marcus had. Stock options in pharmaceutical companies that were about to launch groundbreaking treatments. And most satisfying of all, a portion of Wellington Pharmaceuticals that would pay me dividends for the rest of my life. Suddenly, I was worth more than I'd ever imagined possible. But more importantly, I was free from a man who'd treated our marriage like a business arrangement with benefits. My family's reaction to my newfound wealth was entirely predictable. They didn't congratulate me on surviving a difficult divorce or offer support during my transition to single life. Instead, they immediately began calculating how my settlement would benefit them. Well, at least you came out ahead financially, my father said when I told him the divorce was finalized. Now you can really focus on building your future. By building my future, he meant continuing to fund their lifestyle while also somehow maintaining a relationship with Marcus, who they still considered part of the family. The divorce should have been the end of Marcus's involvement with my family. Should have been the moment when they rallied around me and supported my decision to leave a cheating husband. Instead, it was just the beginning of their campaign to convince me I'd made a mistake. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, I actually thought things might be improving between my family and me. Emma had been texting more frequently, asking about my work and seeming genuinely interested in my life post-divorce. Jake had called to invite me to a Lakers game, just the two of us. My father had even made a comment about being proud of how well I was handling everything. I thought maybe they were finally realizing that choosing sides between Marcus and me wasn't necessary. Maybe we could all move forward like mature adults. God, I was naive. What I didn't know was that Marcus had been working behind the scenes, planting seeds of doubt about my mental state and stability. He'd been telling them that I was struggling more than I let on, and that my refusal to reconcile was really just fear of being vulnerable again. Crystal's always been prideful, he'd told my father during one of their golf games. She's too stubborn to admit she made a mistake divorcing me. He painted himself as the patient, understanding ex-husband who was willing to take me back despite my emotional instability. My family ate it up. They wanted to believe Marcus was the victim in our divorce because it made their continued relationship with him feel justified. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, Emma called me with what seemed like genuine concern. "Crystal, are you sure you're okay? You've seemed really distant lately." "I'm fine, Em. Just busy with work." "Are you sure? Because Dad's worried about you. We all are." There was something in her tone that should have warned me. A kind of practiced sympathy that felt rehearsed. "I'm really okay. Looking forward to Thanksgiving dinner." "About that," Emma said, and I heard it, the shift in her voice. "We've been talking, and we think it might be better if this year was just immediate family." I am immediate family. You know what I mean. People who aren't going through major life changes right now. "Emma, I got divorced. I didn't have a lobotomy. Crystal, you don't have to get defensive. We're just concerned about the family dynamic with everything that's happened." Family dynamic. Code for Marcus will be there, and we don't want you to make it awkward. "Is Marcus going to be at Thanksgiving dinner?" Silence. Long, telling silence. "Emma, is my ex-husband going to be at my family's Thanksgiving dinner?" "He's been part of this family for years, Crystal. The divorce doesn't change that." "Actually, it changes everything. We're not married anymore. He cheated on me. He's not family." "That's your opinion." My 17-year-old sister was lecturing me about family dynamics and adult relationships. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. "Emma, if Marcus is there, I won't be comfortable coming." "Then maybe you should work on your comfort level instead of expecting everyone else to accommodate your issues." Issues. My hurt feelings about being betrayed were issues that I needed to work on. That conversation should have been my warning. But I still held on to hope that when push came to shove, my family would choose their daughter and sister over an ex-son-in-law. I spent Wednesday preparing my contributions to Thanksgiving dinner. Homemade cranberry sauce using my mother's recipe, sweet potato casserole that took hours to prepare, and a bottle of expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. I even bought a new dress, wanting to look confident and successful when I walked into that house. I wanted to show them that divorce hadn't broken me, that I was thriving without Marcus. Thursday morning, I woke up feeling optimistic for the first time in months. Maybe this would be the day we could all move forward as a family. I should have known better. Thursday morning, I spent 2 hours getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner. New burgundy dress, perfect makeup, hairstyled just right. I was determined to show my family that divorce hadn't broken me, that I was thriving without Marcus. Looking back, it's almost funny how much effort I put into impressing people who'd already decided I wasn't worth their loyalty. I drove to my father's house with homemade cranberry sauce and sweet potato casserole in the passenger seat, plus that expensive bottle of wine I'd been saving. The driveway was full of cars. My father's Mercedes, Jake's pickup truck, Emma's little Honda that I'd helped her buy for her 17th birthday. And there, parked right in front of the house like he owned the place, was Marcus's black BMW. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at that familiar license plate. The same car that used to be parked in our garage. The same car he'd driven to work the morning I discovered his affair. For a split second, I considered turning around and leaving, but pride wouldn't let me run away from my own family's Thanksgiving dinner. I walked up to the front door with my contributions to dinner, trying to prepare myself mentally for an awkward but manageable afternoon. The sound of laughter came from inside. Familiar voices, including one that made my stomach clench. Marcus was already holding court in the living room, telling some story that had my father laughing harder than I'd heard in years. "Crystal," Emma called when she saw me. "You made it." The enthusiasm felt forced, like she was performing for an audience. "Of course I made it. It's Thanksgiving." Marcus stood up when he saw me, that practiced smile spreading across his face. "Crystal, you look beautiful. That dress is stunning." The compliment felt like a violation. He'd lost the right to comment on my appearance when he decided to cheat on me. "Marcus," I said coolly, "I didn't know you'd be here." "Oh, you know me. I can't resist your father's famous turkey." He said it like we were old friends catching up, not ex-spouses with a very messy history. My father clapped Marcus on the shoulder. Marcus brought the wine this year, a bottle from that vineyard in Napa we visited last summer. Last summer, when Marcus and I were still married, when I thought we were happy. Now he was sharing memories of our marriage with my family while I stood there like an outsider. Well, I said, setting my cranberry sauce on the kitchen counter, I'll just put this with the other sides. Actually, Emma said, following me into the kitchen, we already have cranberry sauce this year. Marcus brought some from that fancy place downtown. Of course he did. And Mrs. Henderson brought sweet potato casserole, she continued. But I'm sure we can find room for yours too. Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor who'd been invited to dinner instead of… Wait, Emma, who all is coming to dinner? She started rattling off names. My father, Jake, herself, Marcus, Mrs. Henderson, the Johnsons from next door, and the Smiths from down the street. Neighbors. They'd invited neighbors to Thanksgiving dinner. Sounds like a full house, I said carefully. Yeah, Dad thought it would be nice to have a big celebration this year. You know, include everyone who feels like family. Everyone who feels like family. Including neighbors and my ex-husband, but apparently not including his actual daughter without some serious consideration. I should have seen it coming then. The way Emma kept glancing toward the living room, the way my father was avoiding eye contact with me, the way Marcus was being treated like the guest of honor. But I was still operating under the assumption that blood was thicker than water. That when it came down to it, family would choose family. I was about to learn how wrong I could be. Crystal, my father called from the living room. Come join us. Marcus was just telling us about his new charity work. Charity work. Of course Marcus had charity work. Because cheating husbands always look better when they're helping orphans or saving puppies. I walked back into the living room, where Marcus was describing his company's new initiative to provide free medications to low-income families. It's really about giving back to the community, he said, looking humble and philanthropic. When you've been blessed with success, you have a responsibility to help others. Everyone nodded appreciatively. My father looked at Marcus with genuine admiration, the way he'd never looked at me despite my own career successes. That's wonderful, Marcus, Mrs. Henderson said. You're such a generous young man. Crystal's doing well too, Jake offered, probably trying to include me in the conversation. She got promoted to senior marketing director last month. That's great, Marcus said, smiling at me. I always knew you had potential in the business world. Potential. Like I was still developing into something useful instead of already being successful in my own right. The conversation continued around me, but I felt increasingly invisible. Marcus commanded the room effortlessly, charming everyone with stories and jokes while I sat quietly in my expensive dress. This was my family, but somehow I felt like the outsider, and I still had no idea how much worse it was about to get. Dinner was served at exactly 3 p.m., my father's traditional Thanksgiving schedule. The dining room table was set for 9 people, with my father at the head, and my mother's empty chair remaining in its usual spot at the opposite end. I found myself seated between Mrs. Henderson and Jake, while Marcus was positioned directly across from my father, the guest of honor's spot. Emma had outdone herself with the table decorations, fall leaves, elegant candlesticks, and the good china that only came out for special occasions. Everything looked perfect, like a magazine spread of the ideal American Thanksgiving. My father stood to give his traditional Thanksgiving blessing, a speech he'd been giving every year since I was a child. We gathered today to give thanks for family, for health, for the blessings in our lives, he began, his voice warm and ceremonial. This year has brought changes to our family, some difficult, some unexpected. But through it all, we've been reminded of what truly matters. He paused, looking around the table. His eyes lingered on Marcus before moving to me. We're grateful for the people who stand by us through thick and thin, the ones who show us what loyalty and commitment really mean. I felt my chest tighten. The subtext was clear to everyone at the table. We're thankful for Marcus, who continues to be such an important part of this family even during challenging times. Marcus nodded humbly, playing the role of the gracious family friend perfectly. And we're grateful for the wisdom to know the difference between temporary conflicts and permanent bonds. Temporary conflicts. My marriage ending because of infidelity was a temporary conflict. Now let's eat and celebrate the family we've chosen and the family that's chosen us. The family we've chosen. Not the family we were born into, but the family we've chosen. As we passed dishes around the table, the conversation flowed easily. Marcus asked Mrs. Henderson about her garden. The Johnsons shared stories about their recent cruise. Everyone seemed perfectly comfortable with this arrangement except me. Crystal, you're awfully quiet, Mrs. Henderson observed. Are you feeling all right, dear? I'm fine, thank you. Just enjoying listening to everyone. She's probably tired, Emma said. The divorce has been really stressful for her. The divorce. Like it was something that had happened to me instead of something I'd chosen after being betrayed. It's natural for major life changes to take a toll, Marcus said sympathetically. I just want Crystal to know that I harbor no hard feelings. I hope we can all move forward in a positive way. The magnanimity was breathtaking. Here he was, forgiving me for having the audacity to divorce him after he cheated. That's very mature of you, Marcus, my father said approvingly. Mature. Marcus was being mature by offering to forgive me for divorcing him. I took a sip of wine and tried to find my center. This was my family. These were people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. Instead, I felt like I was being slowly erased from my own family story. Marcus, tell everyone about the vacation you're planning, Emma said brightly. Oh, it's nothing too exciting, just a trip to Hawaii in February. I've been thinking about inviting the whole family. He looked around the table. Consider it my treat, a way to show appreciation for all the support you've given me this year. All the support they'd given him, while their daughter sat right there, having received no support whatsoever. That sounds wonderful, Mrs. Henderson said. How generous. What do you think, Crystal? Marcus asked, turning to me with apparent sincerity. Would you like to join us? It could be a good opportunity for healing. The entire table went quiet. 9 pairs of eyes focused on me, waiting for my response. A good opportunity for healing. He was offering to take me on vacation like some kind of therapy retreat. I think I'll pass, I said calmly, but thank you for the invitation. Crystal, my father said, his tone slightly warning. Marcus is being very generous. I understand that, and I appreciate the gesture, but I don't think a vacation together is appropriate given our circumstances. What circumstances? Emma asked. You're divorced. That doesn't mean you have to be enemies. We're not enemies. We're also not family anymore. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Crystal, Jake said carefully, maybe you should think about it. Hawaii sounds pretty great. I've already thought about it. The answer is no. Marcus held up his hands. It's okay, everyone. I understand Crystal needs more time. I'm not going anywhere. The invitation will always be open. He wasn't going anywhere. That was the problem. As dessert was served, I realized something that should have been obvious from the moment I walked in. They weren't just including Marcus in family events. They were replacing me with him, and based on how comfortable everyone seemed with this arrangement, the replacement was already complete. After dinner, while everyone gathered in the living room for coffee and football, I volunteered to help with dishes. I needed a few minutes away from the performance in the other room, where Marcus was undoubtedly charming everyone with more stories of his humanitarian efforts. Emma joined me in the kitchen, which surprised me. Usually she avoided cleanup duties whenever possible. That was a nice dinner, I said, trying to keep things normal. Yeah, Dad really outdid himself this year. She was loading the dishwasher with unusual efficiency. Emma, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy with how things are going? With Marcus being here, I mean. She stopped loading dishes and looked at me directly. Crystal, I think you need to accept reality. What reality is that? Marcus is a good guy who made a mistake. You're punishing everyone because you can't forgive him. I set down the plate I was rinsing and turned to face her fully. Emma, he didn't make a mistake. He had an affair. For months. That's not a mistake. It's a choice. People make bad choices sometimes. That doesn't mean you throw away everything good. Everything good? He betrayed me in the worst possible way. And maybe if you'd been a better wife, he wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. The words hung in the air between us like a slap. Excuse me? I'm just saying, Crystal, you're not exactly the most exciting person in the world. You work all the time, you never want to go out, you're always stressed about something. So I deserve to be cheated on? I didn't say that, but maybe you could have tried harder to keep him interested. My 17-year-old sister was giving me marriage advice based on her vast experience with relationships. Emma, you're still in high school. What do you know about marriage? I know that Marcus treats this family better than you do. He remembers birthdays, he pays for things, he shows up when we need him. I show up when you need me, with an attitude, like you're doing us a favor, because I am doing you a favor. Do you have any idea how much money I've spent on this family over the years? There it is, Emma said, throwing the dish towel down. It always comes back to money with you, because money is the only thing any of you seem to value from me. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time anyone in this family asked how I was doing without wanting something? Emma was quiet for a moment, probably trying to remember. We care about you, Crystal. We just think you're making a mistake by pushing Marcus away. He's not my husband anymore, Em. I don't understand why that's so hard for everyone to accept. Because he's still family to us. And what am I? You're family too, but you're being difficult about this whole situation. Difficult. There was that word again. Emma, if I'm so difficult, maybe I should just stop coming to family events. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm tired of feeling like an outsider in my own family. You're not an outsider. You're just going through a hard time right now. A hard time that everyone thinks I brought on myself. Crystal, nobody thinks that. But her tone suggested otherwise. We finished the dishes in silence, and I realized something that should have been obvious earlier. This wasn't about Thanksgiving dinner. This was about my family making a choice between Marcus and me, and I was losing. When we returned to the living room, Marcus was showing my father something on his phone, probably photos from his latest humanitarian mission or business triumph. I sat down on the couch and watched my family interact with my ex-husband, like he was the son and brother they'd always wanted. The writing was on the wall. I just wasn't ready to read it yet. But I was about to get a crash course in exactly where I stood with my family, and it was going to come in the form of a text message that would change everything. Friday morning, I woke up feeling unsettled about Thanksgiving dinner. Something about the whole dynamic felt wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what bothered me most. Maybe it was the way my father had looked at Marcus with such obvious admiration, or how Emma had defended him so fiercely while criticizing me. Or maybe it was the growing realization that my family was more comfortable with my ex-husband than they were with me. I spent Friday trying to shake off the feeling that I was being slowly written out of my own family's story. Saturday morning, Emma texted me, "Thanks for coming to dinner. Dad was really happy to see you." Such a polite, distant message. Like I was a family friend who'd done them a favor by showing up. I texted back, "Thanks for including me." The formality of our exchange felt wrong. When had my relationship with my sister become so stilted? Sunday afternoon, Jake called. "Hey, Crystal, how are you doing?" "I'm okay. How was the rest of your weekend?" "Good. Marcus took us to that new sports bar downtown yesterday. They have huge screens for watching games." Marcus took them. Not we went or the family went. Marcus took them. "That sounds fun." "Yeah, it was great. You should come next time." "I don't think Marcus and I hanging out socially is a good idea, Jake." "Come on, Crystal. It's been months since the divorce. Don't you think it's time to move on?" "Move on. Everyone wanted me to move on from being betrayed by my husband. I have moved on. I just don't need to be friends with my ex. But he's still family to us." "I understand that, but he's not family to me anymore." "Maybe that's the problem." "What's the problem?" "Your attitude about this whole situation. Marcus is trying to be mature about everything and you're holding grudges." "Jake, he cheated on me." "That's between you and him. It doesn't have to affect the rest of us. But it does affect the rest of you. Because you've chosen to maintain a relationship with someone who hurt your sister. We haven't chosen anyone over anyone. We're just not letting your personal drama ruin our relationships." Personal drama. My marriage ending because of infidelity was personal drama. I hung up feeling more isolated than ever. Tuesday morning, my father called. "Crystal, I was wondering if you'd like to have lunch this week. Just the two of us." This was unusual. My father and I rarely had one-on-one meals unless something was wrong. "Is everything okay, Dad?" "Everything's fine. I just thought it would be nice to catch up." We met at a small cafe near his house Wednesday afternoon. He looked tired, older than his 62 years. "How's work going?" he asked after we'd ordered. "It's good. Busy, but good." "How's retirement treating you?" "Can't complain, though I miss having a regular schedule sometimes." We made small talk for a while, dancing around whatever he'd really called this lunch to discuss. Finally, over coffee, he got to the point. "Crystal, I'm worried about you." "Why?" "You seem angry all the time, bitter about the divorce." "Dad, I'm not bitter. I'm just trying to move forward with my life. By cutting Marcus out completely? That seems extreme. He's my ex-husband. Cutting him out seems appropriate. But he's been such a positive influence on this family." There it was, the real issue. "Dad, he cheated on me. He betrayed me in the worst possible way." "I don't understand why you can't see that. I see that your marriage ended. But marriages end for lots of reasons. That doesn't mean you have to burn every bridge." "I'm not burning bridges. I'm setting boundaries. Sometimes boundaries can become walls, Crystal. And sometimes walls are necessary for protection." He was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Your mother wouldn't have wanted the family divided like this. My mother wouldn't have wanted her daughter betrayed by her husband either. She would have wanted forgiveness, healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened, Dad. No, but it means not letting anger consume you. I'm not consumed by anger. I'm consumed by disappointment in my family's reaction to my divorce." He looked genuinely surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean that when I needed support and understanding, I got lectures about forgiveness and moving on." "We support you, Crystal." "No, you support the idea of me getting back together with Marcus. We support what we think is best for everyone. Everyone except me." That evening, I sat in my house thinking about the conversation with my father. It was becoming clear that my family viewed my divorce as an inconvenience that was disrupting their comfortable relationship with Marcus. I was the problem that needed to be managed, not the victim who deserved support. The realization was painful but clarifying, and it was about to become much more painful. The weeks following my lunch with my father, I started to notice a pattern in my family's behavior. They would invite me to events, but Marcus would inevitably be included. Family dinners, birthday celebrations, even casual get-togethers suddenly included my ex-husband. When I declined these invitations, I was labeled as difficult or stubborn. When I attended, I felt like an unwelcome guest at my own family's gatherings. It was a no-win situation, and I think that was intentional. Emma had started her winter break from high school and was spending even more time at Marcus's office, learning about business through her internship. She would come home with stories about how impressed Marcus was with her work ethic and intelligence. "He said I have real potential in pharmaceutical marketing," she told me over coffee one Saturday morning. "That's nice, Em. He's thinking about offering me a summer position next year, with actual pay this time. Are you planning to accept?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I? Because he's my ex-husband, and it might be awkward for everyone involved." "Crystal, you can't expect the whole world to stop interacting with Marcus because you divorced him." "I don't expect the whole world to stop, but I might expect my sister to consider how I feel about it." "How you feel about what?" "Me having career opportunities? About you building a professional relationship with someone who hurt me." "Marcus didn't hurt me. He hurt you, and that's between you and him." This seemed to be the family's standard response. Marcus's betrayal of me was a private matter that shouldn't affect anyone else's relationship with him. Convenient logic, especially when maintaining those relationships came with financial benefits. Jake's reasoning was even more direct. "Look, Crystal, Marcus has season tickets to the Lakers, great seats. You want me to give that up because you're mad at him?" "I'm not mad at him, Jake. I divorced him because he cheated on me. Same difference. The point is, your personal problems with Marcus don't have to become my problems. Your sister being betrayed by her husband isn't your problem? Not when it means missing out on playoff games." The casual cruelty of his response was breathtaking. My father's justification was more sophisticated but equally hurtful. "Crystal, Marcus has apologized for his mistakes. He's shown genuine remorse and a commitment to being better." "To whom has he apologized?" "To all of us. He knows his actions affected the whole family." "What about apologizing to me?" "He's tried to apologize to you. You won't accept it." This was news to me. Marcus had never apologized for his affair. He'd made excuses, blamed our marriage problems, and suggested we try counseling. But he'd never once said the words, "I'm sorry for cheating on you." "When did he apologize to me, Dad?" "He said he's tried to reach out multiple times to make amends." Reach out. Like sending flowers with manipulative cards counted as making amends. "Dad, Marcus has never apologized for having an affair. He's made excuses and tried to minimize what he did, but he's never taken responsibility." Maybe you weren't ready to hear it. Maybe I wasn't ready to hear it. So now it was my fault for not being receptive to an apology that had never actually been offered. The conversation left me feeling gaslit and frustrated, but I still held on to hope that when it really mattered, my family would choose me over Marcus. That hope was about to be tested in the most brutal way possible. Because Thanksgiving was coming again, and this time, my family was going to make their choice crystal clear. The text message that would change everything was just days away. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I was shopping for ingredients to make my mother's stuffing recipe when my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Can we talk? Important family stuff." I called her back immediately. "Hey, what's going on?" So we need to discuss Thanksgiving arrangements." Her tone was weird, formal, and nervous. "Okay, what time should I come over Thursday?" "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. This year is going to be a little different." "Different how?" "Well, Marcus is going to be there, obviously, and Dad thought it might be better if we kept things simple this year." "Simple how, Emma?" "Just, less complicated. Fewer people to manage." "I'm people to manage now?" "That's not what I meant." What did you mean?" "I meant that having both you and Marcus there makes everyone uncomfortable." "Everyone except me, apparently." "Crystal, don't make this harder than it has to be." "Make what harder?" "Dad thinks it would be better if you maybe sat this one out this year." I stopped walking. Right there in the middle of the grocery store, I stopped moving. "Emma, are you uninviting me from Thanksgiving?" "It's not uninviting, it's just postponing your invitation until we can figure out a better arrangement." "A better arrangement than including your daughter and sister at Thanksgiving dinner?" "Crystal, you're being dramatic again." "I'm being dramatic because I'm shocked that my family is choosing my ex-husband over me for Thanksgiving." "We're not choosing anyone over anyone. We're trying to keep the peace. By excluding me. By avoiding conflict. The conflict wouldn't exist if you stopped inviting Marcus. Marcus has been part of this family longer than your marriage lasted, Crystal." The words hit like a physical blow. "Emma, I've been part of this family my entire life. You know what I meant." "No, I don't think I do. Explain it to me." I meant that Marcus has been good to this family. He supported us, helped us, been there when we needed him. And I haven't? Of course you have. But you're also the one making this situation difficult. I'm making it difficult by existing? You're making it difficult by refusing to be civil with Marcus. I am civil with Marcus. I just don't want to spend holidays with him. Well, he's going to be there, so you need to decide if you can handle that. Or what? Or maybe you should skip this year. I stood there in the grocery store aisle, holding my phone and trying to process what my sister was saying. Emma, are you telling me that if I can't tolerate spending Thanksgiving with my ex-husband, I'm not welcome at my family's table? I'm telling you that we can't base every family gathering around your comfort level with Marcus. Why not? Because he's important to us, too. More important than me? Crystal, stop putting words in my mouth. Answer the question, Emma. Is Marcus more important to this family than I am? Silence. Long, telling silence. I'll take that as a yes, I said finally. Crystal, wait. I hung up. Standing there in the grocery store, holding a bag of celery and a container of sage, I realized my family had just told me everything I needed to know about where I stood with them. They'd chosen Marcus over me, and they expected me to be okay with it. 2 days later, I was getting dressed for a Thanksgiving dinner I apparently wasn't invited to when my phone buzzed with a text message that would change everything. The text was from my father, sent to our family group chat, and it was about to make their choice official. Thursday morning, I was getting dressed for Thanksgiving when my phone buzzed with a text to our family group chat. The message was from my father. We agree you're no longer part of this family. Don't come. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. We agree you're no longer part of this family. We agree. They'd held a vote, and I'd been voted out. Before I could even process what I was reading, let alone respond, Emma removed me from the group chat. Just like that, I was digitally erased from the Peterson family. I sat on my bed in my burgundy dress, holding my phone and trying to understand what had just happened. My father, my sister, and my brother had agreed that I was no longer part of their family, and they'd communicated this decision via text message. The cruelty was breathtaking, but what struck me more than the cruelty was the finality. They weren't threatening to exclude me if I didn't change my behavior. They weren't giving me an ultimatum about accepting Marcus. They were simply informing me that I was no longer family. The decision had been made without my input, without discussion, without any attempt at resolution. For a moment, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around me as the reality of what had happened sank in. Then something else kicked in. Not sadness, not hurt, but clarity. Crystal clear, you might say. They'd made their choice. Now I would make mine. I walked to my computer and logged into our joint bank account, the account that had been funding their lifestyle for years. The balance was $847,000, money I'd been contributing since my mother's death, paying for Emma's college expenses, my father's medical bills, the mortgage on the house, Jake's various emergencies. The account that had been my mother's idea to keep the family connected had become a tool for them to live beyond their means while taking me for granted. But here's the thing about joint accounts. All account holders have equal access and authority, and they just told me I wasn't family anymore. Click. Account restrictions enabled. Click. All debit cards suspended. Click. Online access revoked for secondary account holders. Click. New passwords set. Click. Security questions updated. In less than 10 minutes, I'd cut off their financial lifeline. They'd removed me from the family. I was removing them from my bank account. Fair trade. I finished getting dressed, choosing a different outfit for my new plans. Instead of Thanksgiving dinner with family who'd voted me out, I was going to treat myself to the most expensive restaurant in town. If they didn't want me as family, I didn't need to act like family either. I made a reservation at the Capitol Grill for one, and spent 2 hours eating an incredible meal in peace. No family drama. No walking on eggshells around Marcus. No pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. For the first time in months, I enjoyed a meal without stress. When I finally turned my phone back on around 7 p.m., I had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages. The timeline told the story. The first call came from Emma at 6:47 p.m., probably when she tried to pay for something and her card was declined. Then my father at 6:52 p.m., then Jake at 7:03 p.m., then a rapid succession of calls from all three as they realized their financial safety net had disappeared. The text messages were even more revealing. Emma, my card was declined at dinner. Fix this now. Jake, what did you do to the account? This is petty AF. Dad, Crystal, this is serious. We need to talk immediately. Emma again, I'm literally stranded at a restaurant. My Uber won't accept my card either. The desperation escalated quickly. By 8 p.m., they'd called 31 times. 31 attempts to reach the family member they'd just declared wasn't family anymore. The irony was perfect. They'd spent months choosing Marcus over me because of his financial contributions to their lifestyle. Now they needed me more than they'd ever needed him, and I was the one who was unavailable. I went to bed that night with my phone on silent, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. Tomorrow would bring consequences. But tonight I was finally free. Friday morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 62 text messages. My family had clearly spent the night in crisis mode, trying every possible way to reach me and restore their access to money. The beautiful thing about cutting off someone's financial support is how quickly it reveals their true priorities. All that talk about me not being family had evaporated the moment their credit cards stopped working. I made coffee and read through the increasingly desperate messages while enjoying the sunshine streaming through my kitchen windows. Emma had apparently tried to use multiple cards at different stores, each one declining. She'd been forced to call friends for rides when her Uber cards didn't work. Jake had been unable to pay 4 drinks at his usual bar and had to endure the embarrassment of having his card declined in front of his friends. My father had discovered the problem when his automatic prescription refill was rejected by the pharmacy, but the real panic had set in when they realized I wasn't answering any of their attempts to contact me. The texts had evolved from demanding to pleading. Dad, Crystal, whatever's wrong, we can fix this. Please respond. Emma, I'm sorry about yesterday. I was stressed about school. Can we please talk? Jake, I get that you're mad, but this affects Dad's medications. Don't punish him for our mistake. Our mistake. Finally, an acknowledgement that something had gone wrong. But notice it was our mistake, not our cruel and calculated decision to remove you from the family. By noon, they'd moved beyond individual contact attempts and started recruiting allies. My Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, called. Crystal, honey, your father called me. He's worried sick about you. Whatever happened between you all, family should stick together. Aunt Linda, did they mention that they told me I'm not part of the family anymore? Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Well, I'm sure there was a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. They sent me a text message saying they agreed I'm no longer family, then removed me from the family group chat. Oh my. I had no idea. Your father made it sound like you just stopped talking to them. Funny how the story changes depending on who's telling it. Next came a call from Marcus himself. The audacity was breathtaking. My ex-husband called to defend the family that had chosen him over their own daughter. Crystal, your father called me. He says you've frozen their bank account? What's going on? Marcus, they told me I'm not family anymore. I'm simply honoring their decision by not acting like family. But they're struggling financially, Crystal. Your father can't afford his medications. Then maybe they should have thought about that before they decided I wasn't family. Crystal, be reasonable. They didn't mean it literally. They meant it literally enough to put it in writing and remove me from the family group chat. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. The fact that they'd involved Marcus proved they still hadn't learned their lesson. By evening, the situation had reached peak desperation. Emma showed up at my house at 7 p.m., tears streaming down her face. Through my security cameras, I watched her ring the doorbell repeatedly, then pound on the door when I didn't answer. Crystal, please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Open the door. She stood there for 37 minutes, cycling through anger, bargaining, and back to tears. The neighbors were starting to stare, which finally motivated her to leave. But not before pressing her face against my security camera and delivering what she clearly thought was an emotional final appeal. I know you can see me, Crystal. I know you're in there. Mom would be ashamed of how you're treating family. Using our dead mother to manipulate me was a new low, even for Emma. I pressed the intercom button. Emma, you have 30 seconds to get off my property before I call the police for trespassing. Crystal, please. 20 seconds. Fine, but this isn't over. Actually, it is over. You ended it yesterday when you told me I'm not family. Have a great life. She finally left, and I spent the rest of the evening in peace. It had been less than 24 hours since they'd voted me out of the family, and they were already falling apart without my financial support. But this was just the beginning of their education about consequences. 3 months passed in blessed silence. No calls, no surprise visits, no manipulation attempts through mutual friends. My family had apparently accepted that their financial lifeline was permanently severed. I threw myself into work and started living for myself for the first time in years. Without the constant stress of family drama, I discovered I was actually a happier person when left alone. The joint account remained frozen, but I wasn't cruel. I'd set up automatic payments for my father's essential medications through his pharmacy. Everything else they could figure out themselves. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard updates. Emma had gotten a job at Starbucks and was learning about paying her own bills. Jake had moved back in with my father to save money. My father had sold my mother's jewelry to make mortgage payments. It hurt to hear about the jewelry, but it also confirmed what I'd suspected. they'd been living far beyond their means on my money. Everything was peaceful until March, when my father showed up at my office. My assistant buzzed me. "Ms. Wellington, there's a Robert Peterson here to see you. He says he's your father and asks if he could take you to coffee." I almost said no automatically, but something made me curious about what would bring him to my workplace after 3 months of silence. "Tell him I'll be down in 5 minutes." When I got to the lobby, I barely recognized the man waiting for me. My father had always been meticulous about his appearance. Expensive clothes, perfect grooming, the look of a man who'd never worried about money. The person waiting for me looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. His suit was wrinkled and didn't fit properly. His hair needed cutting. He looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. "Hi, Crystal," he said quietly. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I was hoping we could talk. Maybe grab coffee? Against my better judgment, I agreed. We walked to a nearby cafe. He ordered black coffee, which surprised me. Dad used to drink elaborate espresso drinks that cost more than most people's lunch. "You look good," he said when we sat down. "Healthy." "Thank you. Your mother would be proud of how successful you've become." "Don't use Mom to manipulate me, Dad. We've been down that road." He held up his hands. "You're right. I'm sorry." We sat in silence for a moment. I waited for his angle, the manipulation he'd used to try to get back into my good graces. "Marcus doesn't come around anymore," he said finally. "Good. He stopped visiting about 6 weeks after Thanksgiving. Emma lost her internship at his company. Jake's Lakers tickets got canceled." I sipped my coffee and said nothing. "I think we all believed you and Marcus would eventually work things out, that the divorce was temporary." "Dad, he cheated on me. There was never going to be a reconciliation. I know that now." "You should have known it then." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I should have. This wasn't going how I'd expected. Where were the demands? The guilt trips? I'm sick, Crystal." There it was. "I'm sorry to hear that. Heart disease. I need surgery, but the insurance I can afford doesn't cover the procedure I need." I set down my coffee cup, preparing for the ask. "Dad, if you're here asking for money..." "I'm not." That stopped me cold. "What?" "I'm not asking for money. I know I don't deserve your help after what we did." I studied his face, looking for the lie, but he seemed sincere. "Then why are you here?" "To apologize, and to tell you the truth about something." He pulled out his phone and showed me a text conversation between him and Marcus, dated 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. "Marcus, I think Crystal might take me back if her family encouraged reconciliation. Dad, what do you need us to do?" "Marcus, make it clear that you won't support her unless she gives our marriage another chance." I scrolled through more messages. Marcus had orchestrated the entire thing, convincing my family that cutting me off would force me back to him. "He told us you'd come crawling back within a week," my father said. "He said you couldn't handle being alone financially." And you believed him. We wanted to believe him. We liked our lives better when Marcus was paying for everything. The honesty was brutal and surprising. "Crystal, we chose money over you." I chose money over my own daughter. There's no excuse for that." I felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. "No, there isn't. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what we did and I'm sorry." He stood to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, cutting us off was the right thing to do. We needed to learn that people aren't ATM machines." As he walked away, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't the manipulative father I'd known. This was a man who'd finally understood the consequences of his choices. But understanding and forgiveness are two different things. I agreed to help with his medical insurance, but nothing else. Not because I'd forgiven them, but because I wasn't cruel enough to let him die over this. My siblings never apologized. Through my father, I learned they blamed me for Marcus abandoning them after he got what he wanted. So I chose to build a life where I wasn't wanted. Some families are born, others are chosen. I chose to stop begging for love from people who'd already shown me I wasn't worth their loyalty. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free,